During a team meeting, my brother, who is my boss, said, "You're far too quiet to ever lead anything. You're lucky I still keep you employed." I said nothing. The very next day, Dad retired and left the whole family business to me instead. My brother was the first person I let go. Now he won't stop calling and begging for his job back. I never thought sitting silently in a meeting could be the biggest mistake of my life. But the moment his cruel joke echoed through the room, I knew everything had to change, and I was finally ready to make it happen. The air in that boardroom was thick with unspoken tension, a suffocating silence where everyone waited to see who would break first. I just sat there, my hands clenched under the table, the humiliation burning a hole through me. I've always been the quiet one, not shy, just observant. I noticed things others didn't. Like how Mom's face only truly lit up when my older brother, Noah, spoke. Or how Dad's jaw would visibly tighten whenever they discussed business. I'm 27 now. I never minded it much growing up. I preferred to listen, process, and act when it truly mattered. But in our family, being quiet often got you labeled as weak, or worse, irrelevant. Noah, 3 years my senior, was the golden child. Star quarterback in high school, charismatic, full of bravado. Dad used to joke Noah could sell ice to an Eskimo. While I was in the background, building spreadsheets and quietly optimizing our operations, Noah was up front, giving presentations, soaking up all the credit. That was our dynamic. He talked, I delivered. Our family business was a logistics company, started by my grandfather. Dad expanded it, but Noah was always groomed to take over. I was told I'd always have a role because I was good with tech, but leadership? You don't have the voice for it, Mom once said to me, shrugging off my question about Dad considering me. I told myself I didn't mind. I majored in business systems engineering. After college, I returned home and worked behind the scenes. I built software that saved us hundreds of hours in delivery, routing, automated invoicing, cutting overhead by almost 20% in the first year. Yet every company newsletter, every meeting, it was Noah's strategy, Noah's vision. I just nodded and kept working. 2 years ago, Dad started stepping back, taking more fishing trips. He never announced a formal succession, but Noah began acting like he owned the place. He started managing everyone, including me, which made things tense. He'd shoot down my ideas in meetings, sometimes only to pitch them later as his own. When I'd confront him, he'd just grin, part of the game, little bro gotta be quicker. 6 months ago, Dad called a family meeting. Mom clapped. Noah smirked, like he'd already been crowned. I just sat, watching. Dad talked about retiring, about splitting responsibilities to keep it in the family. Noah immediately cut him off. Dad, everyone knows I'm ready. I've got the leadership skills. He glanced at me as if I wasn't even a factor. Dad just looked at me, then nodded, and ended the meeting early. Later that night, Noah pulled me aside for one of his infamous speeches. Look, man, you do good work, but you're just not that kind of guy, you know? You're a support player. A damn good one. I'll always make sure you're taken care of. It hit me harder than I expected, not the words themselves, I'd heard worse. It was the way he genuinely believed it, like it wasn't even a discussion, just an undeniable fact. The next few months were brutal. Noah was made interim manager, and his ego swelled. Meetings became unbearable. He'd constantly talk over me, sometimes mimicking my quiet tone. Hear that, folks? That's the whisper of innovation, he joked once during a staff huddle. People chuckled awkwardly. I just looked down at my notes, my stomach burning. Then came that meeting, just last week. Monthly operations review. The room was full, even Dad sat quietly in the back. I'd worked all weekend on a new warehouse optimization plan, one that would save us $80,000 a quarter. When I presented it, Noah leaned back, arms crossed, waiting. Then he stood and laughed. Sure, if we want to listen to spreadsheets whisper sweet nothings, he smirked. Look, I get it, Liam has his thing, but let's be real, he's too quiet to ever lead anything. You're lucky I even keep you employed, bro. Dead silence. The air left the room. My ears burned. I wanted to speak, to yell, but I just clenched my fists under the table, blinking. Dad said nothing. My plan was skipped. I didn't sleep that night, staring at the ceiling until 4 a.m., wondering if Noah was right. Was I just the quiet guy, destined to be a footnote? But the next morning, everything changed. Dad called me into his office early. He looked exhausted. He handed me documents and a small black box. I opened it and froze. Transfer papers. A master key to the entire building. I never said anything, Dad said, his voice quiet. But I've been watching. It's your time, Liam. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. He patted my shoulder and left. 30 minutes later, I walked into the main office. Nothing looked different, but everything was. When Noah strutted in, loud as ever, demanding why his badge suddenly didn't unlock the executive suite, I was already sitting at Dad's desk. And I just waited. That was the beginning. The day before, if you'd told me everything would flip so violently, I would have laughed. Not because I didn't want it, but because it felt impossible. Yet that morning, something inside me shifted. I'd spent my adult life overlooked, especially by Noah. Now, for the first time, I had leverage. Real power. And he had no idea. I didn't announce it. That wasn't my style. I sat at Dad's desk, my heart hammering like a drum, letting the moment sink in. I reread the papers, full transfer of operational ownership, effective immediately. All authority and decision-making now rests solely with Liam. Simple. Quiet. Just like me. Noah walked in late, as usual, 30 minutes past our weekly leadership briefing. He tossed his keys onto the table, Starbucks cup in hand, swaggering like the king of the castle. You wouldn't believe the traffic, he declared. Then he stopped. He saw me at the desk. What are you doing in Dad's chair? He chuckled, like it was a prank. I just held up the document. He waited for me to explain. I didn't. I just waited, letting the silence do the work. He finally snatched the papers, scanning them. His face shifted, smirk, then confusion, then disbelief, then a kind of amused outrage. This is fake, right? He tried to laugh. Some kind of joke? Dad put you in charge? I didn't flinch. He did. No. No, this doesn't make sense. You're not a leader, Liam. No offense, but you have no presence. You barely talk in meetings. People don't follow someone who blends into the wall. I stood, met his eyes. That's your problem, Noah. You think volume equals value. He opened his mouth, but I walked past him. You're no longer in management. I'll be restructuring the team this week. The crash of his coffee cup hitting the floor behind me was louder than I expected. He didn't say another word that day. That was just the beginning. The first 2 weeks were chaos. Not because I didn't know what I was doing, but because Noah made it his mission to undermine me. He still had friends on the floor, people he'd taken to lunch. Laughed with. At first, they didn't know what to make of the change. They thought I was just keeping the seat warm until Noah worked his magic. Whispers, cold shoulders. People who once thanked me for fixing their systems now avoided eye contact. I'd walk into a department, and conversations would stop. It stung more than I expected, but I kept going, quietly making changes, gathering information. Noah took every chance to test my patience. He'd walk past my office on calls, loudly proclaiming how the company was better before, how it had no direction now. He'd corner employees, telling them I didn't understand logistics, that they should come to him for anything real. Worst of all, he kept showing up to meetings uninvited. Once, during a quarterly strategy session, I finished presenting a new cost-saving measure when Noah waltzed in, sat down, and said, "Okay, let me tell you how we really used to do things." He hijacked the meeting, talking over me, ignoring the agenda. I didn't stop him. I wanted to see how far he'd push. Afterward, I called him to my office. Calmly, I told him this was the last time. He rolled his eyes. "What are you gonna do? Fire me? Dad would never let you." That's when it hit me. Noah still didn't believe it. He thought Dad would step in, that this was just a test. I knew I needed to make it real. I started cleaning house. Quietly. I tackled the old, bloated, manual processes Noah had implemented. My tech team rebuilt our backend with automation, increased tracking, transparency. Departments noticed improvements, faster scheduling, smoother payroll, real-time tracking. Morale shifted. Slowly, eyes turned to me, not with fear, but respect. For the first time, people saw who had really been holding the company together. Noah didn't take it well. A week later, I found him in the break room with some warehouse guys. They all stopped talking when I walked in. He smiled. "So, boss man, planning to replace everyone who disagreed with you, or just the ones you're jealous of?" I didn't engage him. I looked at the others. "Can you give us a moment?" They hesitated, looked at Noah, then shuffled out. "You have 1 week to adapt," I told him. "Or you're done here." He stood, face twisted in disbelief. "Are you serious? You think you can just cut me out of our company?" I stepped closer. "It's not our company anymore, Noah. It's mine. And you're acting like a liability." That was our last real conversation. What came next wasn't a conversation. It was war. Noah escalated everything. He planted rumors, mass layoffs, selling the company, that I didn't care about the employees. He even tried logging into systems he no longer had access to, triggering security alerts. HR got involved. The tension was palpable. Mom, of course, called me one night. "Your brother's been crying in the garage for 2 nights," she accused, as if I was the villain. "You've always been sensitive, Liam, but this is too far." "He's your brother." "I'm not doing anything to him," I replied. "He's doing it to himself." "You're punishing him for being confident," she snapped. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm holding him accountable for being cruel." She hung up. Dad, though, stayed completely silent. I think he knew this was coming. He'd built the business, watched us grow into it. Deep down, he understood Noah's leadership was a house of cards. But the real breaking point, the moment everything truly fell apart, came during the annual shareholders' dinner. It was held at a fancy hotel, full of speeches and handshakes. This year, I was giving the opening address, my first as CEO. I had a heartfelt speech prepared, not flashy, just honest. I wanted people to see the company was in stable hands. The ballroom was packed. Lights dimmed. I walked to the podium. That's when Noah stood up at his table. He clapped slowly, loudly, mockingly. "Let's all give a round of applause for the quiet kid in the corner," he said, smiling. "The new visionary of the family." Uneasy laughter rippled through the confused crowd. I stared at him. "Go ahead, little bro," he taunted, "tell them how you'll save the company with spreadsheets and awkward silences." More chuckles. Some looked mortified. Dad looked down. Mom looked proud. My hand trembled on the podium, but I didn't look away. I just breathed. 1, 2, 3. I adjusted the microphone. That's when the real storm began. I stared at Noah. The spotlight didn't flinch, casting us both in stark relief, me at the podium with my notes, him smirking, arms wide, like he'd just delivered a brilliant punchline. In that moment, I wasn't angry. I felt hollow, scooped out. All I'd ever wanted was to do right by the company, to be taken seriously. Now, handpicked to lead, at the most important event of the year, my own brother was turning me into a spectacle. I swallowed. The silence was unbearable, waiters stopped moving. I could have ripped into him, exposed everything, how he mocked me, stole my credit, sabotaged our progress. But I didn't. I straightened my spine, gently closed my folder, and leaned into the microphone. "I'll give my speech another time," I said, my voice steady despite the thunder in my chest. "Tonight doesn't feel right." Then I walked straight out. Gasps, murmurs, awkward claps, mostly confusion. Outside, the cold air hit me. I didn't stop walking until I reached the parking lot. My hands were shaking. I sat on the curb, loosened my tie, staring at my shoes. For the first time in years, I felt like a failure. Not for lack of ability, but because no matter what power I held, I was still that quiet kid. To everyone who'd known me since childhood, I was still Liam, the nice one, the tech guy, the helper, not a leader. I didn't go back inside. That night, I skipped dinner, turned off my phone, and lay in bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. No tears, no screaming. Just emptiness. The next morning, I was at the office earlier than usual. Still dark. Keys in hand, engine off, I sat there. What am I doing? Why do I want this? I considered quitting, walking away, selling the company, giving Noah the throne he always felt was his. It would be easy, clean, quiet, my usual way. But then, I remembered. A year ago, Maria, a warehouse worker, had pulled me aside. Missing hours on her paycheck. I stayed late, fixed it, made sure every hour was accounted for. Her quiet relief, the grateful handshake. That moment stuck with me. I didn't need to prove anything to Noah. I didn't need to shout or dominate conversations to earn respect. I just needed to do what I'd always done, take care of our people, build systems that worked, earn trust not with noise, but with consistency. That morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight Noah on his terms. I wouldn't beat him at his game. I would beat him at mine. I started small. An apology email to shareholders, explaining my absence, promising a follow-up presentation. No drama, just facts. Then I worked. For weeks, I practically lived at the office, first to arrive, last to leave. But I wasn't just crunching numbers, I was in the warehouse, the delivery bays, the break rooms. I met night shift staff, talked to drivers about routes and pain points. I invited every department for one-on-one meetings. No gatekeeping. They came, cautiously at first, then in waves. They told me about Noah's inefficient policies, managers abusing power, broken equipment no one cared about. I listened. And I acted. Within 3 weeks, I'd restructured 2 departments, replaced 3 middle managers, implemented a new suggestion system. The shift was obvious. People smiled. They opened up. They started talking about me differently. He listens. He fixed that thing. He's actually around. Even those who'd avoided me started asking questions, offering ideas. Meanwhile, Noah grew quieter. His lunch table posse dwindled. His passive-aggressive remarks stopped. I didn't fire him. Not yet. I wanted him to see it. To understand, fully and deeply, that leadership wasn't about being loud. It was about being effective. The final push came from an unexpected place, Chloe, our new client success manager. She transferred from a partner firm, oblivious to our family drama, and just saw me as the CEO. No baggage. One afternoon, she stopped by my office. You've built something special here, she said. I blinked. Thanks, still working on it. She laughed. People trust you. That's rare. You don't command the room with charisma, you earn it with clarity. It's refreshing. That compliment hit different. Coming from someone with no bias, who just saw the work and respected it. That night, I stayed late, not to work, but to plan. I finally knew how this would end. Not with a fight, but a quiet, devastating decision. It was funny how, once I stopped trying to be noticed and just did what needed to be done, people began noticing. The company hummed like a well-oiled machine. Fewer delays, more transparency, more trust. The walls Noah built to preserve his empire were dismantled brick by the very people he'd looked down on. I wasn't trying to destroy him, not at first. But power reveals people. And Noah, without his title, his inherited authority, without Dad shielding him from his incompetence, he didn't know who he was anymore. That was the first crack. He came in later, sometimes not at all. When he did, he wandered the halls like a ghost, trying to assert control over conversations he wasn't part of. But I didn't just want him out. I wanted why to be undeniable. I wanted everyone to see what I'd seen for years, not out of spite, but necessity. Noah wasn't just a bad leader, he was dangerous in positions of influence. If I just forced him out, the truth would be lost to revisionist history. People needed to know why I let him go. So, I started digging. Not into rumors, but into the numbers. Noah always bragged about his big wins. I'd taken them at face value, Dad had too. But with full access, I traced the lines. What I found was messy: deals without legal review, vendor contracts with bloated fees, unexplained charges. Miscellaneous expenses bled tens of thousands over 2 years. One vendor, Ironstream Transport, stood out. Noah brought them on a year before Dad stepped back, boasting about cutting-edge solutions and a lower per-mile rate. None of it was true. Buried in the billing system were adjusted invoices, duplicate charges, fuel surcharges that defied industry norms, and a completely fabricated premium client relationship fee. Worst, the contract was locked for 36 months. I cross-referenced their business license. Ironstream Transport was registered under a shell company, owned by Noah's old college roommate, the same guy who'd crashed on our couch and borrowed money from Noah. It all clicked. Noah had funneled company money into a personal favor, disguised as a business contract. Not just nepotism. Fraud. Quiet, slow, hard to detect, but fraud. I didn't react. I stared at the screen, numb, as the truth settled like lead in my chest. This wasn't about strategy or leadership styles. Noah had been stealing. I could have gone nuclear right then, but I realized that wasn't the best play. If I wanted this to stick, for the company, the board, and our family to truly understand, I needed to set the stage carefully. I made a list: everything Noah had touched, every department he'd manipulated, every person he'd leaned on. Then I started visiting people, quietly, one by one. I started with Daniel from finance. He'd worked under Noah during the Ironstream contract. A good guy, but hesitant to challenge authority. I invited him to an off-site lunch. No suits, no laptops, just burgers and a notepad. I laid out what I'd found. Daniel's face drained. I always thought something was off, he admitted. But Noah said the numbers were pre-approved, that your dad had looked at them. He didn't, I stated. Daniel sighed. I'll help however I can. Then came HR, legal, logistics. I didn't reveal everything, just enough to get them talking. Slowly, like threads unraveling a sweater, the full story emerged. Noah had created a shadow system, not overtly criminal, just enough plausible deniability. But with the right people looking in, documents aligned, the deception became undeniable. Still, I needed more. Something public. So I reached out to Maria, the warehouse worker I'd helped a year ago. She was trusted. People talked to her. I asked if she'd heard anything unusual about Noah. She paused, then leaned in. He's been trying to poach drivers, she whispered. Poach? Yeah, like starting a new company. Offering bonuses, flexible hours. My jaw tightened. He was building a fallback. That explained his disappearances. I thanked Maria, went straight back, and logged into our network security. I pulled every device login, access attempt, and network activity from Noah's account. Over 90 days, he'd emailed confidential client lists to a private Gmail account 14 times. Not just lists, but contract templates, pricing tables, scheduling algorithms, our trade secrets. The next day, I looped in legal, quietly, carefully. No alarms, just preparation. I had everything now. But I wasn't going to the board yet. First, Dad. It had been weeks since Dad and I spoke beyond polite nods. I think he wanted to see what we'd become on our own. I invited him to lunch at the old diner near the truck depot, the same booth we always used to get. He showed up in his faded baseball cap, an old company windbreaker. Tired, but alert. No small talk. I slid the folder across the table. He flipped it open, scanned the pages, silent for almost 5 minutes. Then he closed it, placed his hands on the table, and met my eyes. Ready for what comes next? I nodded. Not revenge, he said. Justice. I know. He exhaled. Then it's time. I looked at my coffee, then back at him. You're not surprised. He shook his head. I hoped I was wrong. But I saw it years ago. I just didn't want to believe it. Why didn't you stop it? I thought maybe the weight of the company would humble him. Make him better. He paused. Didn't work. No, I said quietly. It didn't. We didn't need to say much after that. The next morning, I scheduled a mandatory executive board meeting. I printed every document, email, vendor record, client leak, placing them in black binders, Noah's name emblazoned on each. And one special, sealed envelope, labeled Final Decision, CEO Action Required. This wouldn't just be a termination. It would be an unmasking. Noah walked in late, as usual. His swagger now tinged with unease. He didn't notice the sealed envelope at the center of the table. He slid into the last open seat across from me, a half-hearted grin. What's all this? He asked, eyes flitting around. Surprise performance reviews? No one laughed. Not this time. I let the room settle. I changed this boardroom, it felt warmer now, plants, better lighting, a whiteboard filled with everyone's input. The kind of environment I'd spent months cultivating for trust and collaboration. But this wasn't collaboration. This was a reckoning. I stood slowly, took a breath. I've gathered everyone to present the findings of a formal internal audit, I began. All information has been verified, cross-checked, and reviewed by legal. Supporting evidence is in the binders. Noah opened his. The color drained from his face. Vendor contracts. Pages of financial inconsistencies. Emails, personal communications between him and the Ironstream transport owner, colluding on inflated rates, fabricated surcharges. Screenshots of unauthorized access attempts. Client lists emailed to his personal account. Testimonies from employees he'd poached. I said nothing. Let the evidence speak. Noah flipped pages faster, frantically scanning, shaking his head. This is out of context, he muttered. Ridiculous. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Is there anything in there that's false? I asked calmly. He froze. You didn't even ask for my side. You blindsided me. I didn't move. I'm giving you your side now. Say what you need to say. He looked around, desperate. Come on, guys, you know me. This is a witch hunt. Liam's just bitter because I gave him tough love. He's twisting things. No one responded. Not a single person. Even those who'd laughed at his jokes now stared like they didn't know him. He turned to Dad. You're really going to let this happen? Dad didn't blink. I should have let it happen years ago. Noah slammed the binder shut, stood. This is a joke. I built this company. You all think Liam made it work? Please. I carried it for years. This is sabotage. No, I said, stepping forward. This is accountability. I picked up the sealed envelope from the center of the table, placing it gently before him. He stared at it like a bomb. This is your formal termination, I stated, along with a detailed summary of every policy and legal clause you violated. Legal has prepared the filings. You'll also find a non-compete clause, which you triggered by poaching drivers and sharing proprietary data, and a cease and desist order. His hand hovered. You're being escorted out immediately after this meeting. Your access has already been revoked. Silence. Noah's mouth opened, then closed. Then he laughed, a short, dry, bitter sound. You think this is over? You really think this is how it ends? You're nothing without me. You wouldn't last a month if I wasn't here cleaning up your last paycheck was processed yesterday, I cut in. And for what it's worth, you were never cleaning up anything. You were the mess. His shoulders dropped. Hands clenched. Nothing left to say. Security waited outside. I gave them a nod. He tried one last desperate look, appealing to anyone, but no one met his eyes. Then he was gone. Just like that. The fallout wasn't small. Press inquiries, murmurs from the board, clients needing reassurance. For weeks, I clarified the situation with transparency, not spin. Full disclosure to partners, personal emails to employees explaining the breach of trust, the steps we were taking. The surprising part? People respected it. The truth, no fluff, just accountability. Employee morale skyrocketed. Teams that used to operate in silos collaborated. We rebuilt, slowly, deliberately. I didn't do it alone. I promoted overlooked people, gave managers with empathy space to lead. Hired a new compliance officer, rewrote policy. For the first time, we weren't just family-run, we were team-led. Noah spiraled. I heard rumors, failed company, Ironstream collapsed after we cut ties, Mom refusing to intervene anymore after he asked. She still sends guilt-laced texts, he's your brother, Liam. Family is family. But she knows better than to ask me to reverse anything. Then came the voicemail. Late, after a long call with our warehouse team. Unknown number. I hit play. His voice was quieter, hesitant, weighted down. Hey, it's me. Look, I know I messed up. I was stupid. I was angry. Wasn't thinking straight. I miss it, man. The company, the people, everything. I don't know what to do anymore. Can we talk? I deleted it. Not out of hatred, but because I finally didn't need his validation. For the first time, I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. I was standing on solid ground. Ground I built myself. The next company meeting was different. No drama, no spectacle. A packed room of people who'd stayed, fought through changes, built something better. I stood at the front, not with a binder, but a whiteboard. One sentence at the top, what does real leadership look like? As the room filled with ideas, laughter, and post-it notes, I realized something: revenge didn't have to be loud. It didn't have to be cruel. It just had to be true. And mine was. Noah was wrong about a lot of things, but mostly this: you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be heard when it matters. And now I finally was. What would you have done differently?